be asked to speak today. I see a lot of leaders in our community, and I thank you for this opportunity. And I'll also tell you that, as it did everyone in this audience, I'm sure that video touched me deeply because I can relate. I saw in those sad eyes of Clay Hunt the same eyes I've seen in two of my loved ones. And I will tell you, I'm here today. I do a lot of public speaking, first of all, and I speak about things that I'm very passionate about. I'm very passionate about the wonderful care that community hospice provides. I'm very passionate about veterans. Community hospice formed a community hospice veterans partnership several years ago to help veterans in our area have a compassionate, dignified, good death. So when you see this kind of thing and how people choose to die, it's really hard. It's hard for me personally. But today is going to be a little bit difficult for me because I have a personal story to tell. So those of you who are prayer warriors in the community and in this audience, I know who you are. I'd ask you to lift up a prayer for me because this is my story. It's harder to talk about some of the other things. You see, I'm a survivor of suicide times 2. I've lost the 2 people I love the most in this world to suicide. So I'm going to tell you my story, and at the end, I'm going to have a call to action. I have a request for you. I've experienced the loss of my husband, Mike, to suicide, and my oldest son, Phil, to suicide. Funny, I used to not even be able to say the word suicide. It was just so painful to me. I would say they took their lives. But I can say it now. I was married to a wonderful, kind Christian man, Mike, who suffered from depression that I didn't know about. I was married to him for 22 years and never really understood that. He covered it up. And he covered up his pain with drinking, and a lot of the times he covered his pain with drinking, not around us. And, men do that a lot, don't they? They kind of cover their pain. I don't mean to generalize, but particularly those in the military, aren't you sort of asked to stuff it down and be the big, tough, strong warrior? And you hurt, and how do you deal with that hurt? Well, my husband was hurting, and I didn't realize the extent of it. So after 22 years of marriage, on December 7th, 2000, he killed himself. Fortunately, in a place where I didn't find him. And I'm going to use the words "he left us," because immediately I became a single mom of 2 very hurting sons, Phil and Mark. Mike was unemployed when he took his life, so we were left nothing. That was beside the point. So I found myself being a single mom of Phil and Mark. Phil was in his 2nd year at UF. Mark was a senior in high school here at Wolfson. I'll never forget the day that I got the news about my husband, Mike. It was from a police officer standing at my door, holding up his driver's license to me, saying, "Ma'am, is this your son? I mean, this your husband?" And I said, "Yes." And he told me the news, and I collapsed. And it was my youngest son, Mark, who lifted me. Let me tell you a little bit about the emotions that you feel. One of them they talked about very well in this film, and that is survivor's guilt. I had a counselor at that time, and he called me that night, and he said, "So, tell me about all the guilt you're feeling." And I remember now saying, "How do you know I'm feeling that?" He was a counselor that heard it before. And he walked that walk with me. But you can't help but feel that way. No matter what you did or didn't do, or did or didn't say, you can't help but feel like, if I'd only done this, if I'd only done that, why didn't I say this? Why didn't I grab him and hold him and not let him leave me? You think about the last time that you saw him. You replay that conversation over and over and over in your head, and you do it differently each time so that there's a good ending. But that's not your reality. So yes, I had that overwhelming guilt, and I took a lot of counseling to get through that. The saddest thing to me is, what I'm going to talk about in a minute too, is the ripple effect that they alluded to of guilt. It's not just the guilt I felt. My sons felt it. Friends felt it. Mike worked in the fire department. He was the only non-fireman in the fire department. The whole fire department had to go through grief counseling over the loss of my husband. It affected everyone. It was community grief. It spread wide. It was friends who hadn't seen him in a couple of months but said, God, why didn't I call him and get together and ask him to go out for a beer? Why didn't I do this? People who had no reason to be feeling that way. None of us really had a reason to feel that way. So guilt was there. And then pain. There's no way to describe the pain that you're left with. It's such a deep pain. For me, it actually became physical in nature. I can remember telling people, I feel like somebody has taken a hot glue gun and just seared down the middle of my heart because I've been separated from my husband of 22 years. And there was a physical separation and pain going on. Made it hard to function for a long time. And I'll say publicly here, I'm very thankful that I was working by that time at community hospice where people understood and bore with me when my head checked out on a regular basis. And like the folks here, and like Clay's best friend, I felt anger. How could you leave us like that? How could you hurt our sons like that? And I will tell you, my most extreme pain was for my sons, because all of a sudden they were fatherless at a crucial time in their lives. Senior in high school, second year in college. I remember laying on the floor, beating my fists on the floor and crying and saying, how could he do this to our boys? They need him. When you're a mommy, you make your kids feel better when they hurt. If they have a fever, you give them Tylenol and you take them to the doctor. You make them all better and you make the pain go away. This was a pain I couldn't make go away. So that was my greatest hurt. I learned after Mike's death, there was a long history of depression and all the wound nails that nobody told me about the whole time that I'd been married. And this was a cousin from out west who called to let me know so that I could be proactive about my boys, because I had 2 wound nails. So I was invested in their lives. Phil moved back home from UF. He stayed with me. We sort of circled the trains for a while. We cared for each other because we didn't have Mike. And we plowed through the years. And Phil made several attempts to go back to school, but I think he was so deeply hurt and so wounded, he was really never really able to concentrate and never finished college. He finished his sophomore year. I worked really hard to provide a living for my boys and for me, and to just stay vested in their lives and surround them with the love that I had for them and pray for them every day and encourage them. Again, they were boys. When I asked them to go to counseling, I'm fine. I don't need counseling, I'm fine. I got them both into counseling a couple of times each by bribing them. You know, you have to resort to whatever you can do sometime. You know, if you'll do this, I'll buy you this, I'll give you that, I'll help you with this bill, that sort of thing. But, you know, whatever I did and didn't do, whatever, it wasn't enough for Phil, my oldest son. I did have to tell you that that is our family. Of course, that's Mike on the left. That's Phil right there. This was taken in 1996, right before we got on the cruise. So yes, it's an older picture, but this was kind of a last-minute thought this morning. It was the last thing I could get my hands on, the first thing. Of course, that's me, and to my right is my youngest son, Mark, who is still with me, and I'm very thankful for that. But I've lost half my family. The 2 people to your right of that picture are gone. And it's just Mark and I now. Scroll to Phil, if you would, for me. That's my sweet son, Phil. He struggled with depression. We learned in 2007 at his first suicide attempt that he had inherited the same type of depression that my husband had. And to make a long story short, after rescuing him 3 times and having him make her active twice, he finally succeeded in September of 2009. He left the state to do it where he knew I couldn't rescue him. Sadly, he did the same thing his daddy did. I love him with all my heart. He's still with me. That picture was taken about a month before he killed himself because he wanted a picture of him looking cool by my cool red car. So we took that picture of him, and he is with me every day. I still talk to him every day. He's still a part of me. So now it's just Mark and I. We've made a pact that we're staying here for each other. Ain't nobody going nowhere. And you know what? We have some hard times. Life gives us all struggles, doesn't it? I think there's not any getting out of this without some pain in your life. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And what are you going to do with it? How are you going to cope? Where are you going to go to find your solutions and your strength? So I have a couple of requests for you. I told you I was going to do that. If you're in this audience and you're hurting, seek help. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine this week who's a counselor, a Christian rescue mission, the city rescue mission, and she was saying, you know, Toula, everybody thinks about it at some point in their lives. If they say otherwise, they're lying. Everybody thinks about it. But there is help out there available for you. So if you're in this audience and you're thinking about it, life has just gotten too hard, reach out. Reach out for help. It's there. Call me. I'll talk to you. I'll meet you wherever, because you don't want your loved ones to go through the profound pain that I've had to go through and that my son has had to go through. It is a circle of pain, too. I told you I wanted to mention that whole ripple effect. I like to think of a pebble being dropped in a pond, and I and my son are the center of that pain, but it truly just spreads out in ripples, and it's a community profound pain. There were so many people in the community, both after Mike's death and after Phil's death, that were so profoundly hurt. People came out of the woodworks for Phil's funeral. Friends he hadn't seen in a long, long time. They came from across the U.S. to attend his funeral, and so many of them were saying, why didn't I call him that weekend? Again, that whole survivor's guilt. So if you're hurting, please seek help. It's there. If you know somebody who's hurting, reach out to them, for heaven's sake. Talk to them. Take their hand. Walk them to help if you have to. You can intervene and make a difference. The third request that I have of you is join us in this collaborative effort. It breaks my heart to hear that veterans are leaving us at the rapid rate that they are, about one every hour. In the United States, those who've fought so valiantly for our country, and then they hurt so bad, they end up giving up the fight. Join us in this effort so that we can make an impact and put a stop to this. I have to summarize by giving credit where credit's due, because every day I'm asked, every day it's a little exaggeration, a lot of times I'm asked, how in the world do you cope? How do you make it day to day? How do you get out of bed with all that pain that you're carrying? And I have to say, I have a good Lord who carries me daily. It's not my faith, it's Him that's making me strong. I'm not a strong little girl, but I know where to go to get my strength. And so He's carrying me, and I've asked Him to never, never, never put me down until I get to run into those pearly gates and I get to run into the arms of St. Phil. See, St. Peter's going to be pushed aside. It's going to be St. Phil at those pearly gates for me and my husband, Mike. And that's how I make it day to day. So if you're hurting, call me, see me, talk to me. We'll get you help. That's really all I have to say, except that boy, do I miss them every day. But life is good. And you know, when you're hurting, the next day comes and it's a little better. The sun does shine again, and the sun's shining in my life. I'm also real happy to say I just got engaged a couple of months ago, so life is good. I'd like to entertain any questions if anyone has any. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity.